Welcome to CTC Union Technology's YouTube support channel. In this video, we'll install the latest FreeBSD 13.1 as a virtual machine under Oracle's VirtualBox. Well, it's been just under a week since FreeBSD 13.1 has been released. So I'm going to make up this video really quickly on how to install FreeBSD 13.1 into VirtualBox. Okay, I'm going to go to the FreeBSD website. And let's download FreeBSD. Okay, we want it for the 64-bit AMD 64, and we're looking for the disk 1, and we'll get the XZ, which is compressed. Okay, and when that's downloaded, we can unzip this. I'm using 7-zip. I'm going to extract here. This will result in us having an ISO file. So let's go to our Oracle, and we're going to create a new machine. Let's call it FreeBSD 13.1 64 because it's 64-bit and it's FreeBSD, BSD, 64-bit. Next. Let's give it 2 gig is enough. We want to create a virtual disk, and I like VMTK type, fixed size. 4 gig is enough, but we'll make it 16, which will allow us to install lots of software and a GUI if we want it. Okay, now that we've got our virtual disk created, let's do the settings for this machine. We'll go to System. Let's disable the floppy and move it way down. And let's make the hard disk be our first and optical be our second. Now the logic here is we're going to mount our ISO as a CD first, and we're going to boot because there's nothing in the hard disk. So we'll boot from optical. After FreeBSD is installed and we reboot, it will boot automatically from the hard disk. So that being said, we need to go to storage, and we need to find our ISO image. So let's choose a disk file, and it's here in our downloads. And for the audio, we're going to disable, and for network, we're going to use a bridged adapter, which will give us an IP that's on our subnet. And everything else is okay. So let's start up our virtual machine. Okay, I'll make sure that we're using the correct startup disk. That would be our FreeBSD 13.1 release AMD Disk 1 ISO. And start. We'll hit enter here. Kernel will boot. And we don't really need this message here. Even if my mouse gets captured, just hit the right control key on your keyboard. Okay, we're given 3 options here. The live CD, we'd actually run FreeBSD without installing it. shell would drop us to the shell prompt, and we're going to do install. We're going to continue with the key map and give our machine a name. Okay, we're not going to install a kernel debugger, and we're not going to use any 32-bit libraries. And the ports tree will install later. And the source, because this is a release version, we don't really need to install the source. So we'll enter. If this was an actual machine and I was running on a real hard disk, I would most likely use the ZFS. But we're going to use UFS instead. Use the entire disk, and we'll use the GPT partition table. Press enter again at finish, and one more time to commit, and we're off to the races. There were checksum checks done first, and now the files are being extracted. First is the base system. The base system is the largest part of the operating system. And after that's done, the kernel will be extracted and installed. Okay, there's our base system installed. Now the kernel's being extracted and installed. Okay, at this point we need to write a password for our root user twice. And then we're going to configure our Ethernet interface. We want to use IPv4. And we're going to use DHCP server to configure. So we'll automatically get an IP address from the LAN. And I do not want to do IPv6. And I'll add a universal DNS server, Google. And we need to set up our time. So we're in Asia. This is Taiwan, and we can skip any of these settings. Okay, final is the system configuration. We definitely want to have SSH. We don't need a mouse. We're going to get time automatically. We can have PowerD, and we don't want to dump. Now each of these times, if you want to select or deselect, use the space bar. Very simple. And we'll just skip here. We don't need anything at this point. And we need to add an initial user. And I need to add myself to the wheel group. That's very important. And enter the password twice. And answer yes here to create the account, and answer no here to add another user. And we're done. So there's nothing else we need to do. And now we're going to reboot. And remember, it's going to reboot now from the virtual hard disk, not from the CD. Press enter. And this is an initial boot, so it's going to create a system key that's going to be used for SSH. It'll automatically get an IP address. It's searching for one now, and it gave me IP 0.61 on the 192.168 network. So I will remember that IP, and I can open up an SSH connection, and I can log in. And from my client, I can also elevate myself to root. This is the root folder, CD to the root. These are all of the directories available under the root file system. Okay, and to get out of here, just Control D twice. And back into our virtual machine. In order to shut down, first I need to log in and run the shutdown command. It's shutdown, lowercase p now. Okay, so there it is. You've got a vanilla FreeBSD installed in Oracle VirtualBox.